In the darkest reaches of space, hidden from the prying eyes of the Galactic Council, a small group of Tovari warships hovered in orbit around Titan. They were silent and cloaked, watching the distant lights of the human research outposts below. The Tovari believed themselves to be predators, untouchable in this remote corner of the galaxy. They had studied humanity from afar, labeling them a fledgling species, barely aware of the vast powers lurking in the cosmos. Earth was an afterthought to them, a young civilization with no true influence. But now, they saw an opportunity to send a message. Their mission was simple: strike at this isolated base, disrupt human operations, and return home with a small, tactical victory. No lives were to be taken, just enough destruction to keep the humans aware of their place in the galaxy, a place well below the Tovari Empire. The fleet commander, confident in their intelligence and technology, gave the order. Moments later, bright streams of plasma sliced through the dark, aimed precisely at the outpost. Explosions echoed across Titan's icy surface, shattering the quiet with a fury that rattled the very ground. Buildings cracked and crumbled, equipment burst into flames, and the once serene outpost transformed into a chaotic, fiery landscape. Researchers inside the facility scrambled for cover, shielding each other from the blasts as they radioed desperate messages back to Earth. A few brave souls tried to contain the damage, pulling their injured colleagues to safety, even as debris rained down around them. The Tovari watched from above, their mission seemingly accomplished. They could already imagine the look of fear that would surely spread across Earth's face, the hesitation that would creep into humanity's future actions. They had been careful, strategic, hitting just enough to instill a reminder without provoking full retaliation. In their eyes, the humans were weak and manageable, and this strike would secure the Tovari's influence in their corner of the galaxy. But as the dust settled and the humans began to assess the damage, a very different reaction unfolded on Earth. The message from Titan reached the human government faster than the Tovari had expected, cutting across military channels and landing in the hands of those who understood exactly what this attack represented. As reports of injuries came in, the faces of human leaders hardened with a steely resolve that would have made the Tovari think twice, had they been able to see it. The President of Earth received the news late in the night, in the privacy of her office. The details were grim, and as she read through each line, her expression shifted from shock to cold determination. This was no mere attack on an outpost, no territorial message. It was an assault on human lives, a declaration that Earth and its people were dispensable in the eyes of the Tovari. The President knew instantly that this was not something they could let pass. Humanity had fought too hard and come too far to let an act of aggression go unanswered. The message to the Galactic Council was swift and unmistakable: Earth would not tolerate violence against its people, regardless of their location in the galaxy. As she prepared her statement, the President knew that this was not just a message to the Tovari. It was a statement to every alien species in the Council chambers. They would all see that an attack on a human was an attack on Earth itself, a line that no one would be allowed to cross without facing the full weight of humanity's wrath. News of the President's plan spread quickly through the ranks. Advisors, military officials, and diplomats all understood the gravity of this decision. Humanity had often been underestimated, considered a species more interested in peace and exploration than in territorial disputes. But now, with Titan's researchers hurt and their base in ruins, there was no question of turning the other cheek. Earth would respond. And not just to the Tovari, but to the entire Galactic Council. In the days that followed, Earth prepared to take its case to the Council. The President herself would stand before the delegates, a rare move that underscored the significance of the issue. She would make it clear that humanity was not a passive bystander in galactic affairs. They had shown restraint, but that restraint should not be mistaken for weakness. And now, in the heart of the Galactic Council, that message would be delivered directly, with every member watching, listening, and understanding the unbreakable resolve of the human race. The Tovari had intended to send a message. But as the President prepared to address the Council, it became clear that they were about to receive one far stronger than they had ever anticipated. The Galactic Council chamber was a marvel of architectural prowess, a massive amphitheater where hundreds of alien representatives gathered, each seated according to the complex hierarchy that governed the galaxy. To them, Earth was a minor player, an upstart in the great galactic expanse. Most species saw humanity as an ambitious but naive race, capable of achieving technological advances, yes, but lacking the seasoned wisdom of the Council's older members. Earth's diplomats usually sent ambassadors, minor envoys who requested assistance or guidance, and the Council granted these petitions with a patronizing hand. But today, things were different. Word had spread quickly about the President of Earth herself arriving in person to address the Council, a highly unusual step. Whispers circulated among the delegates as they anticipated the human leader's message. Most assumed this was a routine plea for reparations, perhaps an attempt to gain favor or make Earth appear sympathetic. The Tovari, responsible for the attack, exchanged smirks, expecting a display of human meekness that would affirm their superiority. This would be nothing more than a minor grievance, they thought, one easily quelled with superficial apologies and empty gestures. Then, the President of Earth entered the chamber, her posture firm, her gaze unwavering. She was not what the Council had expected. Dressed in simple attire, her demeanor was resolute and composed. There was no trace of desperation or pleading in her expression. Instead, her eyes held a calm yet fierce determination, a look that silenced the murmurs around her. She walked to the central podium, positioned at the heart of the assembly, and waited as the Council settled into a tense, expectant silence. The Tovari's smug smiles began to fade, a hint of unease creeping into their expressions. When the President spoke, her voice was steady, carrying through the chamber with an authority that none could ignore. She began by recounting the events in a direct and unembellished manner, the attack on the human outposts, the injuries sustained, the destruction left in its wake. There was no attempt to dramatize the situation. Her words alone carried a weight that the delegates felt in every syllable. This was not a request for sympathy. It was a statement of fact, each sentence building an unassailable case. The President paused briefly, allowing her words to resonate. The silence in the chamber was thick with tension. Then, she continued, her voice hardening. She looked directly at the Tovari representatives, addressing them not with anger, but with a calm, unyielding intensity. This was not an isolated incident or an unfortunate accident. It was a targeted attack on our people, on our territory, and thus an attack on Earth itself. Her gaze shifted across the chamber, meeting the eyes of each delegate, ensuring that every being in the room felt the weight of her words. "Make no mistake," she said, her voice echoing in the vast space. "You attacked our home." The Council was stunned, their disbelief evident in the silent exchange of glances and the shifting of postures. The Tovari representatives, previously smug, now shifted uncomfortably, their faces betraying the first signs of doubt and apprehension. They had expected Earth to seek leniency, to ask for redress, to portray themselves as victims. Instead, they were faced with a declaration, a line drawn firmly and unmistakably. The President's gaze held steady as she continued. "Earth has always been open to diplomacy, to collaboration, and to coexistence. We seek knowledge, friendship, and mutual respect. But we do not, and will never, tolerate aggression against our people. Wherever a human life is placed at risk, no matter the distance from our home planet, it is an attack on us all." The statement was a shockwave, rippling through the assembly as the delegates processed her words. The President was making it clear that humanity's reach extended beyond Earth itself, that any corner of the galaxy where humans existed was considered a piece of home. Her message left no room for ambiguity. Earth viewed this as a matter of honor, loyalty, and the safety of their people, principles that they would defend without compromise. The Tovari tried to hide their discomfort, but the cracks were showing. They had anticipated a plea for aid, for restitution. Instead, they were witnessing a new reality. Earth was not begging for forgiveness or cowering before the Council. Humanity's representative was speaking as an equal, demanding that their sovereignty and the lives of their citizens be respected. The President's final words hung in the air like a blade poised to strike. "Let this be a reminder to all. Earth is not a passive member of this Council. We value peace, But we will respond to threats with the same resolve and strength with which we protect our own. Any attack on our people will be met with unwavering defense. This is not a threat, it is a promise." With that, she stepped back, leaving the chamber in a stunned silence. The message was clear, powerful, and unyielding. Earth was not here to be pitted or to request leniency. Humanity was asserting its place in the galaxy with a simple truth: they were here to stay, and they would defend their own against any who dared challenge that right. The silence in the council chamber was almost palpable as the president's words settled over the delegates. No one had expected such a bold declaration, least of all the Tovari, who now found themselves in the crosshairs of the entire assembly's attention. The president's calm but unyielding tone had stripped away any illusions that humanity would remain a quiet, unassertive member of the council. She had left no doubt: Earth saw the attack on Titan as a direct violation of their sovereignty, an insult that could not and would not go unanswered. The president returned to the podium, allowing her gaze to sweep across the delegates, locking eyes with some of the most powerful representatives in the galaxy. The weight of her next words hung in the air before she even spoke, every delegate anticipating the direction this conversation was now taking. Without raising her voice, she explained the reality of Earth's stance. To humanity, any harm inflicted on one of its own, regardless of the location or context, was an attack on every human. There was no distant colony, no remote outpost that wasn't part of their collective spirit. This was a concept that left many in the council unsettled. Other species had their borders and boundaries, but humanity's loyalty was boundless. The Tovari delegate, visibly uneasy, attempted to interject, hoping to soften the severity of the situation. With a carefully composed expression, he tried to frame the attack as a miscalculated territorial exercise, a minor show of strength meant to establish boundaries and assert influence. The delegate spoke with an apologetic tone, downplaying the incident and insinuating that humans were perhaps overreacting, as if this were a trivial misunderstanding blown out of proportion. But the president's response was swift, cutting through the Tovari's attempt at deflection with sharp precision. She reminded the assembly that the so-called territorial exercise had injured civilians, disrupted lives, and inflicted lasting harm on her people. To Earth, there was no such thing as a minor incident when it involved human lives. The implication was clear: Earth would never dismiss an act of violence against its citizens as a mere miscalculation. Then came the core of her message, the words that would linger in the minds of every delegate long after they had left the chamber. "Perhaps you have all grown accustomed to compromises and excuses," she said, her tone unyielding. "Perhaps it has become convenient to view aggression as something to be negotiated or softened. But that is not the way of Earth. When you harm one of us, you harm all of us. There is no distant outpost that does not matter, no life too far removed from our core to be protected." A ripple of whispers moved through the chamber, as the delegates absorbed the full weight of her statement. Humanity, a species so often dismissed as a young, naive race, was making it clear that their principles were as vast and immovable as the stars themselves. This wasn't a plea for restitution or an appeal for mercy. It was a declaration of unity and resolve, one that defied the Council's culture of bureaucratic equivocation. The President's gaze settled back on the Tovari delegate, whose earlier arrogance had now been replaced with visible discomfort. She continued, "Let it be known that Earth will not tolerate such acts of aggression again. We value peace, but we will never hesitate to defend our people with the full force of our capabilities. The lives lost or injured on Titan are not forgotten, and any further provocations will be met with consequences that echo far beyond your calculations." The warning was unmistakable. Earth was done with being seen as a silent observer in galactic politics, a member without agency. The President was asserting Earth's right to protect its people, its territories, and its honor, and she was doing so in a manner that left no room for ambiguity. Every delegate in the room now understood that humanity had boundaries that would not be crossed, that the loyalty of Earth's people was a bond that couldn't be broken. As the President finished, the Tovari sat in stunned silence, their earlier confidence shattered. For the first time, they understood the magnitude of their miscalculation. They had sought to intimidate humanity, but in doing so, they had brought upon themselves the unwavering gaze of a species that protected its own with unflinching resolve. The council chamber remained tense, filled with the realization that humanity's response was not just a defense of its territory, but a proclamation of its place within the galaxy. The president's words hung heavy in the air, the silence around her absolute. The Tovari sat in visible discomfort, their faces a pale reflection of the smugness they'd worn only moments ago. Around the chamber, the other delegates shifted uneasily, some exchanging uncertain glances. They were witnessing something unprecedented, a young species not only standing its ground but doing so with a conviction that left no doubt. Humanity was here, unyielding, and unwilling to compromise when it came to the safety and dignity of its people. In a final statement that echoed through the vast room, the President addressed the entire Council, making it clear that Earth was done tolerating the dismissive attitudes and condescending looks. She stated that humanity was prepared to contribute to the galaxy's prosperity, but that no one should mistake their peaceful intentions for weakness. Her gaze settled on each delegate in turn, especially on those who had once whispered doubts about humanity's resilience and strength. She reminded them that Earth had come through trials of its own, wars, disasters, challenges that had tempered its people into something unbreakable. A few alien representatives, impressed by the President's unwavering stance, began to nod subtly, their expressions shifting from uncertainty to a quiet respect. They understood now that humanity's strength lay not only in its technology or its resources but in its unity, in the fierce loyalty it held for its people. The President's message had resonated with them, and a ripple of quiet admiration moved through those who had initially been skeptical. They saw now that humanity's dedication was not a simple declaration. It was a promise backed by action, one that they knew Earth would fulfill if challenged. The Tovari, desperate to salvage their position, attempted to downplay the situation further. Their representatives stammered an apology, expressing regret for any unintended harm, and trying to frame the attack as a misunderstanding, a cultural misstep. But the President's eyes held a cold, unyielding light as she let their excuses fall flat. She didn't need to respond to their weak defense. Her silence spoke volumes. The Council's delegates understood that this was no misunderstanding but an act of aggression that had now irrevocably altered Earth's stance. As the session moved toward its end, other species began to take note of the Tovari's vulnerability, seeing them now as a faction that had underestimated the wrong opponent. Some delegates discreetly exchanged glances, recognizing an opportunity to reassess their alliances. The Tovari's blunder had exposed them not only to Earth's ire but to the judgment of the entire Council, who saw now that their aggression had come from a place of arrogance, not strength. The President, having said all that needed to be said, turned to leave the podium, but not before delivering a final, resounding statement. Earth may be new to this Council, but our commitment to our people is older and stronger than any threat. We came here to build, to grow, to stand beside you as equals, but if you test our resolve, you will find that our patience has limits. Any further attack on our citizens anywhere in this galaxy will be met with consequences that none of you will wish to face. The Council chamber remained silent as she stepped away, her words leaving a lasting impression. She had made it clear that Earth was not to be underestimated, that humanity valued each life in its fold as sacred, and that they would defend their own with a fierce, unbreakable loyalty. Other delegates sat in stunned silence, a newfound respect brewing in the air. They knew now that Earth was not simply a young species on the galactic stage, it was a force, one with values that even the oldest civilizations could admire and perhaps fear. As the President exited, the Council chamber remained silent, her warning hanging in the air like a storm on the horizon. The Tovari, once arrogant, now sat humbled and anxious, aware that they had misjudged not only a species but the heart of what made humanity resilient. The galaxy, it seemed, would not forget this day, nor the message that had been delivered with such unwavering resolve.